Ritual summoning sucks. Out of all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Summoning mechanics, it has to be the worst. There's a reason why we only have 7 Dueling Book pages worth of ritual monsters compared to the 20 plus of fusion, synchro, Emu, and link monsters. Why the majority of ritual archetypes that currently exist are barely playable, while all the other one-offs are simply dregs of nostalgia. It's because, dare I say it again, ritual summoning sucks. But it doesn't have to. Konami has shown us in recent years that it's possible to make good ritual decks, and as a not biased at all premier ritual summoning aficionado, I have my own ideas on how to improve the mechanic further. So that brings us to the topic of today's video. We're going to talk about 2 things. Number 1, why ritual summoning at its core flat out blows, and number 2, how it's been improved on so far and how we can still improve it. The first thing you need to realize about ritual summoning is how insanely specific its requirements are. You need the ritual monster you want to summon, the ritual spell that is associated with it, and any number of monsters whose levels either add up to or exceed your baby blue. There are some exceptions to this, but they aren't the norm. On paper, this might not sound too difficult. Pre-preparation of rites alone grabs 2 of these, doesn't it, Toon World? Then all I need is some material? Sure, pre-prep is basically God's gift to man, but unless you're a good player like I am, there's no way you're always opening that beauty, and some ritual archetypes can't even play it. We do have quite a few other generic searchers, Preparation of Rite, Diviner Setting Herald the Arclight, or the classic Mongshu and Senshu duo for example, but these only source either the ritual spell or the ritual monster. I haven't even brought up where you're getting the material to tribute. In a vacuum, ritual summoning is more or less a rigged 3+ card combo, and rogue players should know how hard it can be to pull those off. Contrast this with, say, link summoning. You literally just need dudes. Think about the requirements on link monsters like IP Masquerena, the Nightmares, or Appaloosa. 2 non-link monsters, 2 monsters with different names, 2+ monsters with different names. In theory, 2 copies of Bolt Penguin can make Masquerena. A cat you find on the street and some loose change could make a Nightmare. The pile of tax returns I haven't mailed back to the IRS yet could make an Appaloosa. Admittedly, there are some link monsters that are a bit harder to summon here and there. Also, in a vacuum, link monsters that have a higher link rating than 2 or 3+ card combos like ritual monsters, but link summoning is still so much easier than ritual summoning. There are plenty of engines that, though not intended for the former, work exceptionally well with it, but that wouldn't work well with the latter. Sure, many modern ritual decks have been designed to be insanely consistent to the point where it's not all that hard to gather a ritual monster, its corresponding spell, and tribute fodder. Necros is historically renowned for this, though I'd argue Gishi was the first to genuinely make the push. Mitsurugi is doing a hell of a fine job at present. Furthermore, as I already alluded to, Konami has printed many generic ritual searchers that, despite my critiques, are unequivocally relevant. And as we will discuss later, many ritual decks have been streamlined so they aren't 3+ card combos as they would have been in theory. Yet, in a sense, you'll always be playing catch up to other summoning mechanics, no? You give the same level of consistency to an XC deck or a synchro deck, and they can run so much farther than a ritual deck given the same. Consider that you don't ever need to search for the former. There's this funny little thing called an extra deck you might have heard of, where those X-Seed monsters and synchro monsters will be forever on standby. The aforementioned link monsters too. So while you're scrambling to solve a duel puzzle, your opponent will be doing something like Toon World, what about fusion summoning? Yes, there are quite a few similarities between this mechanic and ritual summoning. To summon a fusion monster, you need a fusion spell and 2+ monsters of a certain name or type. The fusion mechanic has historically faced the same issue of specific requirements that I've coined for ritual summoning here. Though there is one thing that distinguishes the two in the form of when it comes to building a ritual deck, you need slots for your ritual monsters, slots for your ritual spells, slots for all of the extra chunk to get to them. Then, if your ritual deck lacks good built-in tribute fodder, you need to make room for that too. All of this ends up consuming quite a bit of main deck space to the point of being uncomfortable. A quality that's defined plenty of competitive decks throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history is having an engine that is very condensed. This is important because it allows the player to fill that leftover space with generic, good value staples that they can use to interact with and overcome a broad range of game states. Zodiac back in 2016 could be piloted off of around 18 in-archetype or related supporting cards. Pyraisial in the modern day did it off of 15 pre-April 2025 ban lists. Invoke demands just 9, and yet your opponent will still have an invocation after you Ash Alistair. Many ritual decks in the past have fallen flat on account of the fact that they waste so much space on their engine. Ultimately, they end up lacking enough options to answer their opponent if they haven't already established their own board. Demise/Ruin and Nephthys to give 2 examples, 75% of your average deck list for these archetypes is just combo pieces. If you go second and you're drawing, say, 2 ritual monsters, a ritual spell, and some bulk, I don't know if you'll be able to play through the behemoth that is a Malice end board. You can increase your deck count above 40 to compensate, yes, but it's hard to win out over value over another deck that doesn't have to do that. Alternatively, you could also just play less engine, but then you risk not being able to ritual summon at all. A contributing reason to why Voiceless Voice has been viable in the past year of me making this video is because it can execute its game plan requiring only about 20 slots at minimum. The remainder is typically just hand traps. Yet, even then, it's been overshadowed by other options. But Toon World, if my deck is all gas, can't I just push through my opponent's interactions or get lucky, go first, and just make an unbreakable board? Sure, you can. A caveat to this whole deck space argument is that, though we've had competitive decks that minimize their engines, we've also had others that thrive off of pure engine. Lightsworn and Tearlament come to my mind. You literally mill your heart out and play through anything that isn't named Dimensional Shifter. Drytron, and an archetype that feels kinda weird to say is a ritual deck but still qualifies as one, would just vomit out an unbreakable board bar your opponent's restraining order. Yet, this sort of creates a polarizing gameplay where you either just completely shut your opponent down or fail to make it off of the ground. And I don't think ritual summoning should have to be defined by that trait. A healthy mechanic should be able to support multiple avenues of play rather than favoring one above all others. Something else to consider regarding ritual summoning is how much it consumes in hand advantage. I need to emphasize again that we're talking about the mechanic at its basal state. Konami has improved upon this fault by supplementing modern ritual archetypes with additional search effects. Nonetheless, you can't deny that ritual summoning is naturally a -2. You summon a monster at the cost of the spell to do so, and a fodder attributed. If you aren't an archetype that has a card with a lovely fine text, this card counts as an entire tribute, you could potentially lose more resources. Now, this wouldn't matter in the case you're summoning something insane. The coup de grace that will blow away Kaiba's life points found it on the unbridled power of friendship. But in reality, most ritual monsters are kinda average? Before you get mad and start pointing at things like Necros of Unicorn, Halo of Perfection, or whatever the heck the Drytron ritual monsters are called, I forget their names, you should know that I agree. There are some pretty decent ritual monsters here and there, but the rest are mid, no? Mid in the sense that you're investing so much to summon a choker wannabe that sets a slightly better crackdown, a mildly entertaining battle trick, the chance that your Vendered Slayer gets to inherit even one single cool effect of the spawn it slays and isn't just an average 9-5 working dude that becomes rank 6 material. For the record, I'm especially salty about Vendered because I had so much hype for them when they first got announced, only to get hit with the classic TCK exclusive wombo combo. I've learned my lesson, never expect anything. Essentially, you're putting up with all the downsides of ritual summoning to summon something that is okay at best. When monsters from other summoning mechanics, or even your typical run-of-the-mill main deck monsters, replicate some of these effects or just have better versions of them without sharing the hassle, what's the point? What exasperates this mediocrity is the fact that the majority of ritual monsters simply don't do anything in hand. They're just dead until you summon them, meaning you usually have one less card to push through whatever negates your opponent has set up. Sure, Magician Black Chaos Max is a wannabe Azathoth once it hits the board, but until then, it's the equivalent of drawing a Blue Eyes in your opening hand. Except Blue Eyes per its flavor text is virtually and can actually be tribute summoned. Am I being harsh on ritual monsters? Yeah, I sort of am. A lot of the examples I claimed are bad or average, also the others that I didn't get the chance to bring up, really aren't the worst things in the world. They are at least playable compared to concepts like Gemini's or Level Up. But again, when you consider the fact that a lot of ritual monsters have effects that are so similar to effects on many extra deck monsters, most of which are easier to summon than themselves, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth the effort to bear with ritual summoning's inherent flaws to summon a shell of another? Maybe you just love these blue cards as much as I do and don't care about these grievances. If not though, why bother? So I've dumped on ritual summoning enough. It's time to glaze it. Sure, the mechanic might suck inherently, but where is ritual summoning nowadays? Not in an awful position actually. That's because Konami has actually made an effort to improve it. The first gripe I had with ritual summoning was how specific its requirements are. This can be and has already been overcome in 2 ways. 1, increased consistency, and 2, neo-ritual summons. Yes, earlier I had downplayed how much an added consistency could really do to improve ritual summoning. I'd argue that a super consistent ritual deck is never going to be on the same level as an XC deck or a synchro deck of identical stature. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still grant this characteristic to the former. Even if ritual summoning may continually be somewhat worse than its brethren, it is without a doubt viable if it can be done easily. Hence why so many ritual archetypes nowadays have so many built-in searchers. Even if they don't, again, Konami has printed plenty of generic tools for ritual decks to tap. I've mentioned things like Diviner and Pre-Prep, but also consider the Incantations and the Dogmatica package. Something that should happen more often, however, is the potential for ritual summons to go beyond your hand. I'm dubbing this concept Neo-Ritual Summon, but no, I made this term up on the spot. Give me the ability to summon my blue cards using materials from the deck, the extra deck, or from the graveyard. Or let me summon a ritual monster from the deck or graveyard instead of having to draw it. Advanced Ritual Art, Necros Kaleidoscope, and Revenderate Evolution are all amazing ritual spells that embody the former. High Ritual Art was a try at the latter, though Mitsurugi Ritual is undoubtedly a better version of it. This obviously removes a ton of pressure on you to have to gather all the requirements to ritual summon in your hand or on your field. Consequently, this alleviates some of the losses to hand advantage that you otherwise would have suffered, and may even let you streamline deck lists by allowing you to cut down on certain engine pieces. Yes, you could argue that Neo Ritual Summon defeats the whole point of, or the whole fantasy of ritual summoning, that this feeds into the whole power creep of the game. But we can't afford to keep things traditional all the time. It's not like summoning from the deck is all that different from summoning from the hand, and power creep stems far beyond just the ritual mechanic. Allowing ritual summoning to be more dynamic, in my eyes, would make the decks they're offered a lot more fun and flexible. Let's also just make ritual monsters do more things. For one, let more ritual monsters search cards on summon. Megalith, Ophiel, and Skull Guardian immediately replace themselves when they hit the board, which is nice to minimize the losses to hand advantage. It's simple and proven to work. If we don't want to do that, then let more ritual monsters source out extra bodies instead. Gishki Neremonis can summon Gishki bodies from the grave. You could summon the body you just sacrificed, an abyss to resupply your resources, or another copy of itself for an additional negate. The Mitsurugi ritual monsters can summon themselves attributed, making it as if you didn't use any tribute fodder for your effects in the first place. Shino Baroness Peacock can summon an unsuspecting rock from your deck that will make your opponent smile so happily at you. Both of these options just de-risk ritual summoning as a whole. You're not dumping all your eggs into a basket hoping things will pan out. Your efforts instead continue to build momentum. Also, why not let more ritual monsters do stuff in the hand? Increase their utility beyond their field presence. Mikanko Ohime is pesky on board, but also a way to search for any Mikanko card while in hand. Mitsurugi's Ami no Habakiri no Mitsurugi does something very similar, simply tutoring out its archetype's main deck monsters with ease. These are two prominent examples, though even giving a ritual monster something small like a Cerebus-like effect would be neat. Naturally, there needs to be a fine balance to all of this. Yes, ritual decks need the changes we've discussed, and maybe even a few more that I didn't list. But to blatantly provide it all of them without second thought is disingenuous. Any deck can be broken if you dump a million different generic effects on it. Just look at Circular. Issue is, you risk creating a pile of slop rather than something with a well-defined identity. What I appreciate about Voiceless Voice and Mitsurugi, the two most recent well-performing ritual decks relative to this video, is that, as hinted already, they improve on ritual summoning while still being unique in their own regard. Voiceless has a pretty condensed engine, as I had said earlier, is insanely consistent, and has some really strong ritual monsters. The deck relies on low to gain many of its incredible effects. This creates choke points in its game plan, but feeds really well into its narrative of the girl being a priestess beckoning these larger-than-life gods. Check out my other video on them for some context, by the way, shameful channel plug. Mitsurugi, on the other hand, isn't as concise as Voiceless, but has so many damn good effects, some of which we covered already. In line with how reptile-type monster design has been trending in the past couple of years, the archetype relies on tributing bodies beyond just that required of ritual summoning to pump out some nasty combos. On the one hand, this could allude to the biological process by which many real-life reptiles renew their skin by shedding older layers. Your Mitsurugi names become stronger by sacrificing their kin. Or it could allude to the concept of yokai in Japanese folklore, evident through the human-like Mitsurugi main deck monsters having animalistic ritual counterparts. Essentially, we should make ritual decks better, but not in an ignorant manner. We should find ways to weave the necessary features we discussed into a provocative game plan rather than create a dull game plan just to meet the necessary features. By this process, we can make ritual archetypes that are up to par with archetypes owing to other summoning mechanics that still offer a fresh take on this game of Yu-Gi-Oh! We all love. Look, all of this is to say that ritual summoning is cool. It's flawed, but not nearly as flawed as it was in the past or as I make it out to be. And as long as we keep on the trend we have been following for the mechanic, also acknowledging and implementing other fixes that have worked or that have yet to be realized, ritual summoning could potentially end up not being Yu-Gi-Oh's worst mechanic. I'm not joking, by the way, I am quite the ritual aficionado. You see in this picture Necros, Gishki, Nephthys, and Voiceless Voice? I've actually picked up Demise/Ruin Megalith and Nouvelle in the past, but had to sell them because I needed space and money. Strangely, I have not tried Mitsurugi yet, but I should since it seems really fun. And of course, better than Vendred, which, Konami, I'm still waiting for that SSS tier support, anytime now. Anyhow, thank you everyone for watching. We covered a lot today, though I acknowledge my takes aren't all perfect. If you have anything to say, for example, if you agreed with one of my points and wanted to offer some additional insight, or if you just wanted to dunk up my dumb YouTuber, let it all out in the comment section below. Subscribe if you can. please check out the channel Discord linked in the description. Also, if you're feeling generous, a tip on my Patreon would be nice. Otherwise, I hope you have a good night.